We're back here on 101, and now we'd like to welcome to the show a sports reporter for Deadspin, formerly with CBS News and ESPN. He's also the CEO of Truebull, a new publication focused on stories set inside college campuses. Donovan Dooley. Donovan, welcome to the show.
How you doing, guys? How you doing? Nice to be here.
Pretty good, pretty good. Thanks for being with us. So I'm going to get right into it. The NFL season kicked off Thursday night. We had the Chiefs and the Texans. Wasn't the prettiest of game, but I actually want to talk about what happened before the first play even happened. You know, we had this
Right.
moment of unity between the two teams. It was great, locked arms. You had Patrick Mahomes obviously been very outspoken about this whole thing. Unfortunately, you couldn't miss the booing of the fans that were at Arrowhead Stadium. So what's your takeaway from that? Where do you think the NFL is going to go from here?
I think that's a very interesting place that the NFL is in right now, to be honest with you. They are in a position right now, and I wrote about this earlier today on Deadspin, where their superstars, Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, Lamar Jackson, the faces of the NFL are Black quarterbacks. They have the power and the leverage to be able to force the NFL's hand at basically anything they want to right now when it comes to social and racial justice. So the NFL is in a different predicament than it was in 2016, even with Colin Kaepernick. If you remember in 2016, Colin Kaepernick was not a star player. He probably wasn't even starting at the time. Now you have guys that are perennial superstars now making this movement for their race and on their specific teams. And the NFL just simply cannot ignore that, no matter what their fans do or how their fans feel about it. It's really interesting predicament that they find themselves in. And it's like I wrote earlier today, the NFL will probably never be the same again after this, because once we have this influx of Black talent that's coming in to take over the NFL, especially at the quarterback position, which is the most powerful position on the field, and I don't think anybody can really deny that. Once you have these guys taking over those power positions and they're basically able to negotiate their way to get anything they want to from the NFL out of this social justice movement, it's going to be an interesting predicament the NFL is going to find itself in, because now they do have to appeal to their fans, but they also have to appeal to their stars. And right now the stars are winning.
Yeah, and Donovan, you mentioned the article you wrote Friday morning about proving that, that last night's game proves that the NFL as we know it no longer exists. And something that you wrote and a point that you made is that we shouldn't be escaping what's happening in reality for sports. And I think a lot of sports fans do that. They look to sports as an escape. How imperative is it for you that professional leagues and athletes continue to kind of emphasize that message that just because this is sports doesn't mean we're going to shy away or not talk about sensitive issues that need to be discussed?
Right, definitely. I believe that sports in itself should be emblematic of society. It should be an example of what society is. And right now, what we have in society right now is a situation that needs to change. It needs to change. And for a long time, so many people have been just willing to tune into these games, whether it be NBA, NFL, MLB, etc., and just completely block out everything that wasn't pressing to them or everything that they felt like they didn't have to deal with, they didn't have to handle, or they didn't have to address. Now, with the statements made by these players, especially Mahomes and Watson last night, there's no avoiding it. You can't avoid it. You have to look at it. It's present. It's right there in your face. There's no more hiding behind your ignorance or just simply ignoring what's going on in this country. And I think it's imperative for these athletes to continue to do this and continue to get their message out, because the more that you hammer down this message, the more that you preach on it, the more that you talk about it, the more that it's in the news, the more that it's talked about and discussed, the more likely we are to moving towards change and moving toward actually having a society that's actually equal for all. So I believe it's very important for guys like Mahomes, Watson, Jackson, Russell Wilson, all these different guys that are going to have huge platforms during this NFL season to continue to embark on this journey for equality.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the players have been the most outspoken part of obviously the NFL. What kind of steps do you think someone like Roger Goodell could take, someone who is not being directly affected by these issues that these players are coming to the public about, and people are looking to him to be a spotlight, to be a leader in the situation? What's a step that he can take besides just allowing his players to speak out and, you know, letting them have decals on their helmets and that kind of thing? What's another active step that someone like Roger Goodell could take in this situation?
I think an active step that Roger Goodell could continue to take is continuing to mention and continuing to refer back to Colin Kaepernick, number one. I believe that's vitally important to be able to actually address the issues the NFL has had with listening to its players, and also the issues the NFL has had with, with equality and with injustice. Number two, I feel like Roger Goodell should also take steps to try to implement more Black decision makers getting roles in the NFL. As you know, the NFL has a lack of Black coaches. That's extremely pitiful, considering that the league is 70% Black players. They also have a lack of Black GMs. They have a lack of Black people in upper management. And if you really want to affect change, you have to start putting people of color, and more important, and more specifically, Black people into those roles so they can try to affect change from the top down. Change doesn't necessarily start from the bottom up, it starts from the top down. So you have to be able to implement guys and put people in those positions to be able to adequately affect change in those ways. And it also starts not even with the teams, but it also starts at the NFL front office. It starts at league personnel, in all these different positions. It needs to be a holistic approach to actively allowing these people who have been disenfranchised for this long to actively get into these positions of power.
And Donovan, another issue pressing the NFL right now is the coronavirus and safety protocols and measures being implemented. How realistic do you think it is for the NFL to complete an entire 16-game regular season with a postseason, considering they're not going into a bubble and they're going to try and freelance and travel normally like Major League Baseball has done? And we've seen the outbreaks in Major League Baseball earlier. How realistic do you think the NFL can get a full season in, considering the circumstances?
It's not going to be realistic unless the NFL is going to continue to dedicate resources to testing these players every single day. If the NFL is not willing to do that, it's going to be extremely hard to keep on going on with a season, because, as you said, they're not in the bubble like the NBA was. They're not stationary. They're not in one place. You're going to have guys getting on flights. You're going to have guys in different hotels. There's going to be travel involved. And there's a lot of factors that the NFL just won't be able to control as the season progresses. And so what they need to do is they have to dedicate testing every single day. They have to continue to be vigilant with their contact tracing, and they have to make sure that they are on top of this COVID situation at any time that it presents itself. The COVID-19 reserve list that they have right now is going to be very, very important to how they conduct their business for the rest of this season, because once a guy ends up on that COVID-19 reserve list, they are supposed to be inactive. And if you're inactive, that means you need to be completely away from all activity and everything that's going on. The NFL has the resources and has the money and has the time and has the people to be able to conduct the season. However, if they do not go with the proper protocols of testing every single day, and I think it starts there, then they're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, definitely. Now, Donovan, let's assume the best. Let's assume we're able to play out the full season. I know Chiefs looked like they hadn't skipped a beat last night. Do you see them returning to championship for a second year in a row? Do you have any sleeper picks? Any predictions for the 2020 season?
I believe that the Chiefs are going to be the representative out of the AFC, barring a healthy Mahomes. I believe if you have a healthy 15 standing back there, I just don't think there's going to be anybody in the game that can go tit for tat with them. Honestly, I love Lamar Jackson. I love some of the other teams out there in the AFC, but they're just not going to be able to go tit for tat for this Chiefs team that has the $500 million man back there. They're just not, it's not going to be able to do it. In the NFC, I think Seattle's a team to watch. Definitely coming up this year. Obviously, when you talk about the Saints and you talk about Brady in Tampa Bay, those are going to be very interesting to watch. I just don't know if anybody is going to be able to contend with the weapons that the Chiefs have on offense. When you talk about Mahomes, then now you have Clyde Edwards-Helaire absolutely killing it last night out of LSU. And they just added a completely new dimension to their offense. And you guys still have those explosive wide receivers. You still have Hill, Watkins, Demarcus Robinson, all these guys that are still there. I just do not see a team that can run with them, especially during the playoffs when the going gets tough.
So, Donovan, what do you think is more likely now that obviously Tom Brady has moved on from New England to Tampa Bay? Who do you think has the better season? If we do have a full season, who do you like better going into the season, the Patriots or the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
I like the Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay, definitely. Belichick is a mastermind. I think there's no debating that. But we just look at the weapons that Tampa Bay has. I just don't think you can overlook all the skill guys that they have and everything that they present when you talk about their team, because you have to think, it's like, it's still about matchups. The NFL, you can talk about scheme, you can talk about what defense guys are going to be in. You can talk about, the game planning that Belichick or any other coach can implement. But when you're talking about guys that are just stacked, teams that are just completely stacked, like the Chiefs, and now you're talking about Tampa Bay and the Bucs with Brady. They got Shady McCoy, Leonard Fournette in the backfield with them now. You're talking about stud wide receivers and Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and tight ends, Gronkowski, Brate, OJ Howard. Like it just runs the gamut of how many weapons they can throw at you. And it's just going to be very, very interesting to see, number one, who's going to be able to stop that. And then number two, how they're going to be able to do it. For right now, I do not see somebody being able to consistently stop this team, especially when you're talking about Brady down there, bringing a whole new flavor to that Tampa Bay offense.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be fun to watch. Now, transitioning from the pro to college side of football, we have college games this weekend, which didn't see coming, but
yeah, that seems crazy.
It's mind blowing. Do you think it? Normally, we'd be sitting here asking you, "Oh, do you think who's going to come out on top? What are the playoffs going to look like?" But I'm going to ask you the same kind of question we talked about with the NFL. Do you see the season playing out? Do you see us getting to the playoffs? Do you see us getting through the first 2-3 weeks?
Ooh, in college is even crazier because it feels like it's even more people that you have to account for now. And obviously you're talking about the amateurism thing and the safety of these kids. And I think, like I said before with the NFL, if these programs are going to dedicate the necessary precautions that they need to testing every single day, to contact tracing every single day, and to having just a full understanding and full awareness every single day about where these kids have been, what these kids are doing, and if these kids have contracted the virus or not. That's going to determine if these guys can go through with an entire season or not. It's really that simple. If they can do that, they can go through an entire season. If they cannot, then they won't be able to. And as we've seen, the effects that the coronavirus is having on not just older individuals, but also younger individuals now, when you talk about heart problems, neurological effects, and different lung issues that kids are having now as a result of catching the virus, it's going to be extremely treacherous if you're not able to completely track and completely understand and have that data available to be able to thwart the spread of this virus.
Yeah, Donovan, and COVID has also had the Power 5 conferences really without any cohesion, without any agreement on how to move about this season. And obviously the biggest news was the Big Ten and the Pac-12 deciding to postpone and delay their seasons. What do you think about universities like Ohio State, who are kind of going out of their way to really force the other teams in their conference to play just so that they can have a shot to compete for a national championship? What do you think about teams kind of pressuring their conferences to play just so that they can go ahead and contend for a national title?
I don't feel like it's right for one specific team to be pressuring an entire conference to play. If I'm correct, the Big Ten, the university presidents and chancellors, they voted was either 12-2 or 11-3 to postpone the season, and that was back in August. I feel like once your conference has made a decision about what it's going to do, I feel like you should stick with what the conference has said, because the conference has spoken to many medical experts. Everybody in the conference has spoken to medical experts. They've been well versed on this issue, and they are making a decision specifically for the athletes in that conference. The SEC might have something different. The ACC might have something different. The Big 12 might have something different. But based on the athletes in the Big 10 specifically, they already made a decision that it was safer to postpone the season and to not play in the fall. Is it going to suck for Ohio State because they had a chance to win national championship? Of course it is. But I think the main precedent here that you have to look at and that you have to take into account is these players' safety. And like what I said earlier, all the neurological effects, all the heart effects, all the lung effects that come with this virus are daunting. They're extremely daunting. And what you do not want is to have a situation where you have an athlete make this decision to come out there and play, and now they end up with the virus, and now they have long-lasting and chronic effects on them. That's not what you want. And so for the Big Ten, if they felt like the decision was better for them to postpone and for them to come back in 2021, then I feel like that's a decision that Ohio State needs to live with and should live with. It's unfortunate for the players. It's unfortunate for many of the personnel in Ohio State, because they had a chance to actually make it to the playoffs and actually win a championship. However, I feel like this is the best decision for keeping not only the players, but all the personnel safe. And you also have to look at this fact here. Without the Pac-12 and without the Big Ten, are we even going to have a legitimate champion anyway? So if these guys are missing out, what are they actually missing out on? There's not actually going to be a legitimate champion this year anyway if these conferences do not come back and play, because there's always going to be an asterisk prescribed to this year.
Yeah, I mean, I know they've already been talking about changing the ranking system because of the lack of programs. So it's definitely going to be a strange season. Unfortunately, they don't have a bubble, but the NBA does, and they've made it to the playoffs. I know you're a big NBA fan. Who do you see advancing from the West? Who do you see moving on from the East?
I got the Clippers advancing to the finals in the West. I feel like they are the most complete team. I know the Lakers are playing extremely well right now, but I do feel like the Clippers are the most complete team. I feel like they're the deeper team. I feel like they have more weapons that they can go to down the stretch than the Lakers do. I don't trust the Lakers' consistent perimeter shooting. I don't believe that's going to hold them up, especially when they start playing Kawhi, Paul George, Lou Williams, and Montrezl Harrell. I don't feel like that's going to be enough to beat the Clippers. I got them advancing in the West. Then I have Boston. Now, Boston might lose Game 7 tonight, and I'm just going to be stuck. But I have Boston actually making it out of the East and having a Boston versus the Clippers finals, the Clippers versus Celtics finals. And I got the Clippers winning it all.
Well, I mean, before we get you out of here, Donovan, I think we have to mention Milwaukee and Giannis. Is his best still to come in Milwaukee, or do you see him maybe not signing that Supermax this summer and deciding maybe there's greener pastures elsewhere for a championship? Right. What do you think about Giannis's future?
Giannis has said that he is not the type of guy to basically go around the situation. He likes to plow through and make it to the other side. For me, I think he's got to go. I think it's time for him to go. I think it's time for him to get out of Milwaukee. I think it's time for him to, like you said, try to see where greener pastures are. Because look, the simple thing is this: like, they've tried for years. Giannis has been an elite player for years now. This is not a new thing. They have tried to implement and tried to put players around him that best suit his skill set, and they have failed. They failed last year when they went up against Toronto, and they failed this year when they went up against Miami. And if you keep running into the same issues of when you play stout defensive teams, the same thing they're going to do to Giannis, they've been doing for years. They're going to compact the paint, they're going to make a wall, and they're going to force the other guys to go out there and beat you. And while they have put a precedent on getting shooters, you know, they made it vitally important to get shooters out there that can space the floor for Giannis. They're not necessarily the best basketball players. And what I mean by that is they can't really make moves off the dribble. Maybe it's a pump fake, one dribble, and then a shot. But can you actually create other offense for other guys on the court? Because right now what we're seeing in Milwaukee is this: you're seeing Giannis basically collapse all of the defense. And then when you play good defensive teams like Toronto was last year when they had Kawhi, and when you saw with Miami this year, teams that can help and recover quickly out there to those guys, they're having extreme problems with. They're having really serious problems with beating those type of teams. So you need to have guys on the squad that when they catch the ball, they can do more, and they can create, and they can make opportunities for other guys. You know, Middleton has shown that he can do that at times, but other times he's been, where's he been? I can't find him. You know what I mean? Like, he's been non-existent. So you need more consistent guys that can go out there and that can make plays for other teammates and make plays for themselves when Giannis collapses that defense. And then I think Milwaukee will find a way. However, we've seen it time and time again. I don't feel like Milwaukee is the place where Giannis is going to get his first ring. I just don't see it. I think he's going to have to go somewhere else and follow the same trajectory as LeBron, same trajectory as KD, and same trajectory as some other players in the league that have left their home to find success.
All right, Donovan. Well, loved having you on the show. Love talking to you. Thank you for coming on. Again, Donovan
Thanks for having
Dooley,
me, guys.
Deadspin writer and reporter. Great talking to you.
Thank you, Donovan.
All right, guys. Y'all take care.